Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Columbia Art and Technology Lectures. This semester focusing on open source culture, the intersection of intellectual property, technology, and the arts. This series is organized by the Digital Media Center here at the School of the Arts in collaboration with the Computer Music Center and also the Center for New Media Teaching and Learning, which is producing the website where you can find streaming video for all of the previous lectures. And you can find that just by Googling Columbia Art and Technology Lectures. It's with great pleasure that I welcome Cory Arcangel tonight. He's the fifth speaker in our series this semester. Cory is a computer artist whose work is concerned with technology's relationship to culture and creativity. He's a founding member of Beige, which is a group of computer programmers and enthusiasts who recycle obsolete computers and video game systems, Game Boys, etc., and make art and music with them. He's also a member of RSG, Radical Software Group, which is a collaborative group of artists who've done a bunch of projects mostly online, including Carnivore, which many of you may be familiar with. Cory's work has been exhibited in a lot of places recently, at the Whitney Biennial, at the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Museum of Modern Art, the Guggenheim Museum. He's represented by Team Gallery here in New York. He has shown at Tate Britain, Foxy Productions. It's quite a long list. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Cory Arcangel.
Thank you. All right, so this is my outline for the talk today, and this is what I'm going to talk about. So first I'll go through a quick overview. And for those of you who've seen my talks before, this one is going to be a little bit different and a little bit more focused, hopefully. Because Mark we were talking, and he's like, you do something in your artwork. He's like, sometimes you recycle code, He's like, I think that's interesting. And I was like, oh, I do? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I do sometimes. And so the umbrella of this talk is different ways to recycle code. And, well, not only to recycle code, and I also wanted to make it a little broader, how in some of my projects I either will reuse code or steal code, that's a better way to put it, or reuse or steal aesthetics. And so it's kind of like my interest in how computer software and computer code all have their own aesthetic, and just a lot of my work deals with mucking around within that aesthetic and stuff like that. So I picked out a couple projects, I think like 7 or 8, that deal with those topics, and I tried to arrange them in a way that makes sense. First, I'm going to talk about how I got started doing this kind of stuff, and talk a little bit about my work with Beige, and that's how I got heavily involved in this computer stuff. And then we're going to go through some projects, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is this project I did called Data Diaries, which is a project where I just kind of reinterpret some code that I found lying around. And then we're going to talk about projects that I actually steal code from different sources and turn them into artwork, most notably video games. And then after that, I wanted to show you a few things that I do when I'm not screwing around with computers to give you an idea of like a general overview of my work. This doesn't make any sense now, but hopefully it'll make sense when I'm doing it. And then I wanted to talk about a project I did called the Infinite Fill Zone that deals with using an aesthetic stolen from a certain piece of software. And then I wanted to talk about my work with ibeam.org, which deals with a bunch of stuff, a bunch of silly internet projects that deal with page scraping, which is a technique where you just kind of scrape all the data off of a website and interpret it and then kind of throw it back. Anyway, I'll explain it in a bit. So why don't we start off with the first thing? When I went to college at the Oberlin Conservatory of Music, and I went to college to study classical guitar. And also, at any time, I don't want to keep talking. So if you guys have any questions or anything's confusing, just raise your hand or just shout out, right? Because if I just keep talking, I'll lose myself. Do you know what I mean? So we got to keep this moving. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so I'll be okay. Anyway, okay. So I went there, and that was really when I first got pretty heavy into computer art. And basically, about 2 years into the program, and it was a pretty heavy duty. Oh, I supposed to stand from this booth ring. Sorry. It was a pretty heavy duty, a typical classical education, right? So I had to practice guitar all day long, and it was just a normal conservatory education. And a couple years into it, like a lot of conservatory students, I got really, really, really burnt out and kind of had a breakdown or whatever and flipped out. And just at the same time got a heavy interest in computers. Now, I was always a computer nerd. I was like way into the Bard's Tale and like computer games or whatever. But I never had learned how to program until I went to college. And the reason I wanted to learn how to program initially is because after having been trained as a classical guitarist, I had no skills at all. And so I was like, I'm going to be graduating from college in a year and a half or 2 years, and I have not even an ounce of a skill. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, it was a practical decision at first to learn computers, you know what I mean? But as I learned computers and I had all this excess energy from not playing guitar 6 hours a day, I got pretty heavy into it. And it was around this time I started collaborating with a person who I've worked with for a number of years named Paul B. Davis. And we started a record label together called Beige Records. And it was in these early collaborations with Paul that kind of formed my artistic look at computers. And we had done a lot of talking in those days, and that was the days of the beginnings of when media art started to hit pretty heavy in kind of liberal arts colleges, and so everyone was screwing on computers. And we just did a lot of talking and just basically, for whatever reason, cornered ourselves into a hole, just being like, you got to know how to program, and if you're not programming, you're a poser. And I don't necessarily believe this today, but at that time I was kind of a punk, you know what I mean? And I was always like, yo, And so we formed a record label called Beige Records, and it kind of acted somewhat as a record label and also somewhat as like a crew, you know what I mean? Like step to Beige. I mean, it was ridiculous, but whatever. We were 19 or whatever, so. And so I want to show you the first project, and I always talk about this project in my lectures because I think it was a really important project for me and the other kids in Beige. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about, so we had a techno record label, right? And we released techno records for a couple years, and they were received with mixed, they were received well. And it was also the birth of eBay, and Paul, as I mentioned, got heavy into eBay. This was pre-IPO eBay. And like everybody, when they first learn about eBay, they just have like a spaz out that drains them of a couple $100. And for Paul, it happened to drain him of a couple $100 on Ataris. And so our dorm room started to fill up with these old Atari computers. And at a certain point, we just had kind of a flashbulb idea. We were like, well, if we're going to release another techno record, let's do a record, but let's make it on these old computers, right? And so we came up with this record. Called the 8-bit construction set. And so basically the concept is that we made one side on the Commodore 64 home computer, right? And we made the other side on the Atari 800 home computer. And these are, early 80s Mac and PC. It was like these are the two computers that people had that then people would argue about which was cooler, right? And so basically the idea of this record, it's actually a DJ battle record. So it's for DJs, like everybody familiar with Scratch DJ battles? Okay. Anyway, okay. So it just starts off like the record starts off with scratch tones, so sounds for DJs to scratch with, and then locked grooves, which are infinite repeating loops, and then a track, just like a straight up club track, you know what I mean? And then data, which is like a lot of people forget that before floppy drives were commercially available, computers used to store programs on cassette tape as audio files. And so these tracks on the end of the record are programs for the Commodore and the Atari that you could then load onto cassette tape and then load and execute into your computer. And so it's also, this record is also in a way software distribution. And so we were really happy about that. And while we were making this record, basically, yes, questions, good, very good, I love it.
If you computed the software that you put on that
record,
what would it do?
Good question. On the Commodore side is the cool side. Each side has 3 different sections. One is a shout-outs, which is like shout-outs to all our peeps, and just a list of all our friends and whatever, and I don't know, whatever. And a video, like what we would refer to as a post-data video, which is another ridiculous term we invented back then. But I'll show you an example of this in a second. Oops, now I'm ruining the webcast. Sorry. So it's basically just a noise video, like colors, and it's going crazy. And the third part is SID 303, which is a program written by another member of Beige named Joe Boykman, which is a Roland 303 emulator for the Commodore 64. Do all you know what the Roland 303 synthesizer is? Should I play an example of what a Roland 303 sounds like? OK. Hold on while my iTunes loads up. Roland 303 is a synthesizer that birthed Acid House. And so here, I'll play Heavy Acid Riding, which is a track that Paul and I actually made in our band, the Acid Heads. And this is what a 303 sounds like. Here, wait, hold on. That like. Maybe this, like this kind of like. Anyway, did that make any sense at all? It's like Acid House was like, this version of house music was this one synthesizer. It just made this one particular noise. And we were heavy techno nerds, and to a certain extent, I still am a heavy techno nerd. But so yeah, this is a program on the Commodore that was supposedly to emulate that kind of sound, which is just ridiculous. And the Atari side does essentially the same thing, but it's not quite as involved. So so that's what it would do, to answer Mark's question. Are there any questions about this? I should also say that there was 4 people, and it took us about 2.5 years to make it. And it was in this time that we got really heavy duty into learning how to program these old computers. Yes, question?
Did anyone ever actually manage to successfully load the software?
Oh, that's a real... I don't think so many people did. Like a couple kids, I think, got the Atari side. And you'd have to ask my friend Paul this. And I think maybe one kid got the Commodore side. But it has a problem because you have to do it right when you buy the record. Or it gets scratched, you know what I mean? Yeah, but we had it on our website too.
How many did you press?
3,000. And we just repressed them, actually. If you want to go get them at Turntable Lab in the East Village, you're welcome to. And they're usually sold pretty cheap, like $7 or something. Old school prices. So let me pass it out. Any other questions? So yeah, it was 4 members, Joe Boykman, Joe Bond, Paul Davis, and me. And so this was our little group. And it was also the time that we got heavily involved in programming these old computers and learning how they worked. And that really got me started on making this stupid, well, not stupid. Someone once told me, Cory, don't call your work stupid. But after years and years, I still do. This awesome computer stuff that I do. Here, you could pass it around. There's some funny stuff in the record. I also use this record as a folder, so let me take out all my paper. Okay. There is some funny stuff. Oh, here's the sheet that tells you how to load the data into the how to load the data from the record to your computer, with a nice little "Don't fuck with us." That was our kind of slogan. Here, that and 8 bits for life. Biatch, which is like totally, anyway. Like I said, we were pretty young. Anyway, but that came out in 2001, so that's pretty old, but it kind of really set the pace for me to making this computer stuff. So around that time, I was also got into programming. 1, to make, to screw on that kind of computers, and 2, the first kind of heavy-duty computer art I made that dealt with code was just to play pranks on people in my school. And so I just, so I just wanted to, for instance, the first big thing I remember doing by taking apart a program and disassembling it and reassembling it was it was back when I went to school, we had a public computer lab and everyone used that lab to check their email, and they needed to use a program called Telnet, which, now I think you probably have some online system or whatever. And so you'd have to open up Telnet, and so I disassemble it. And does everyone know what disassembling means? Like, all programs on computer are this is where you guys have to help me here, are data that's been compiled for the machine, right? And it's just a bunch of ones and zeros. And the funny thing that a lot of people don't know is you can then disassemble that, and then it becomes into sort of a language that you could understand, and then you can go futzing with all of that, and then reassemble it, and then it will do something a little bit different. And so the first thing I did was I made a mail program that I would install on all the computers at school. So when kids went to check their mail, the computer would shut down, and the CD-ROM drive would open, and I thought that was the greatest thing ever. Because I could just kind of like sit at one computer and pretend like I was working, and some kid would sit down and be like, and then they'd be like, and then go. Anyway, so that was the first thing I ever did. Anyway, but point I'm trying to make is around this time is when I was starting to heavy-duty futz with computers and see how operating systems worked and stuff like that, and then I started to make art. And so the project I want to show now is a project that oh wait, maybe next is low-level all-stars. Should I show low-level all-stars? Oh wait, well let me show the project called Data Diaries. See, this is going to be hard for you because I'm going to skip all around. So you'll listen. Okay. Well, actually, yeah. Okay. Can you not do that DVD that's in there? So let's cancel that DVD. I wanted to show a project called Data Diaries, which I did recently, but it was an idea I thought of years ago around the same time. And let me go to the website. I'll show it off the web. Turbule.
That's a Mariah Carey thing for you?
Huh? What? Is there a Mariah Carey? Oh, yeah, sure. Well, this is my Delicious feed. This is my page. This is up by accident, by the way. It's like I have a page of links that I put up every day because I'm a heavy web surfer. Like 4 packs a day for web surfing. And so and this is the first time it ever happened, someone emailed me and they're like, yo dude, right on, awesome link page. And it was my first fan mail for my links page, which was awesome. And he emailed me this. He's like, this is my present because you have such cool links. And let's see if it works. Oh, I hope they didn't take it down. Oh, okay. So the guy obviously understands that I'm interested, and we'll talk about this later. My word for this kind of design is called dirt style. But this is high-end dirt style. Dirt style meaning just the nastiest. Do you know what I mean? But this is obviously like dirt style with a lot of, well, actually, I'm gonna move. So I'm sorry, all the people watching this online. I gotta get out of the camera. Okay, just look at this. Like, obviously, Photoshop clone tool. Like, that's great. You know what I mean? This is what I'm interested in. This is just like someone went. I mean, God, I don't know what was happening. Okay. But I just surf all day, and we could talk later about, at the end of the lecture, I'm going to get into how all my art now is basically just like that stuff, but just, anyway, like bad stuff for the web. And you see that my link from last night was a link to old Macintosh browsers, which I have running on my computer here, Netscape 1.0, which I made the lecture notes in today, which I decided I was like, man, I love the blink tag. It'd be so funny if I put the entire web page in between a blink tag, and that's why the whole web page is blinking. Anyway, okay, Data Diaries. Sorry, I got sidetracked. This is always what happens. B-U-L-E-N-C. Okay, so why I wanted to show Data Diaries is because this is an example of just this came out of that phase when I was futzing around in school in the public lab. And I did this other thing that I used to called RAM phishing. And so what people don't know is that the random access processor of a computer never gets erased. It just gets overwritten until the computer is turned off. And so what that means is that if you have a computer in the public lab, or at least then when you had a computer in the public lab, if the computer was on all day and there's 10 people using that computer, all their junk was sitting in the random access memory chip of the computer, meaning if they were writing a paper, it would get loaded into RAM, and when they quit the program, most likely parts of that paper were still in RAM. And when they were writing emails, the same thing. And so I used to go RAM fishing, which is I'd sit down at a computer in the public lab and just fish through RAM for strings and see what people had left behind. And it was kind of a way for me to just giggle a little bit. And this project comes out of that because I was then started screwing with the QuickTime file format. And I learned that there's a funny thing you could do with the QuickTime file. QuickTime is like a movie file on a computer, right? And see, stop me if this gets too technical. I wanted this talk to be a little bit technical, right? OK, anyway. Basically, what I would do is I would have a movie on the hard drive, right? And then a file on the Macintosh at the time was organized in two parts. One, the part of the file called the header, which told the computer what was about to happen. The header says, look, computer, this is a movie. It's going to be 2 minutes long. It's going to be in 16 colors. And it's going to have an audio track, right? And the second part of the file is the data, which then that header will read through, right? And so I found by accident that if you delete the data and you double-click on the file, QuickTime didn't have any error checking. So it would be like, cool, we're going to have a movie. It's going to be 5 minutes long. It's going to be 16 colors. And then it would just play whatever's in the RAM because it had no idea. And the way I found out about this was by accident is, I just downloaded a movie and I just forced quit right after I downloaded it. You know what I mean? And then I found out how it happened. And so I eventually ended up doing a project called Data Diaries out of that, which basically what I did was I made a movie out of my RAM for every day of the month. And so does that make sense? So every day it changes because God knows what I did that day. And so I made 31 movies, each one for the day of the month. And so I made a website for it. So let's watch the movies. Black and white or color? Color. Boy. OK, what day? What day do we like?
27.
OK, 27, Ron Hextall's number. Any hockey fans in the house? Ron Hextall? Come on. Oh, I went into the wrong field. He was the goalie for the Philadelphia Flyers who had a bad temper problem and would often skate out of his net and like chop people. And he was also like, I think, the highest scoring goalie ever because he would take slap shots and wing them off the glass and it would bounce into the net. Very talented man.
Islander fan.
Huh?
Islander fan.
You're an Islander fan. So you're like, quit it with the Ron Hextall talk. OK. Yeah, let's get back to the computer art, please. All right, so here's the 27th. Oh, perfect. So this is what, I mean, it was just, I just said, like, look, it's going to be 16 colors and it's going to be 11 minutes long. And so it's all 128 megabytes of my RAM. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Oh, this is what happens when the computer crashes and it resets the RAM. So my, let's see if, oh, this is a cool part, hold on. Hold on. There we go. Reset. Oh, there we go. Woo! But the thing you guys should know about this is I basically didn't do anything. You know what I mean? That was what was cool about this project. It was like totally low stress. And for those of you taking notes, it's on Turbulence. It was commissioned by Turbulence, which is a place that commissions web art and still to this day. So yeah, this is what happened. My computer obviously crashed, emails, whatever. So does that make sense? So all the days look basically similar. Let's go to a different day. One more day. Anybody?
18.
OK, 8.
What's generating the sound?
Oh, I said that it had a sound. I just said that it had a sound file in it. And so it's just, OK, that data, there's sound data there too, right? Like, it just basically, the entire project came down to what the header was. And the way I designed the header was what would be just enough for people to see in real time over a 56K modem. And so it ended up being a movie this size with this sound file. And so it was kind of like half determined by the restrictions of the web and I guess half determined, yeah, that's it. Oh, that looks cool. Yeah, question.
Did you ever get anything that like was a QuickTime movie that showed up in there, so you got like a little clip of a QuickTime?
Oh no, because the QuickTime movie would have to have been the same.
Right.
the same size of this. And this actually, the trick about this is that this is actually a QuickTime movie about that big that I'm just blowing up on the website. But I do get sounds. If sounds are uncompressed, you could hear like if I made something on Pro Tools that day, you would hear all the samples in Pro Tools and stuff like that. So never video, but sound, because sound is often stored uncompressed on a computer. Does that make sense?
So the full thing is really big?
No, the actual movie is about this big. And what I'm doing on the website is I'm stretching it. And so that's why it loads so quickly, because it's really tiny. And this, I mean, if I would make it again today, the movie, the pixels would be smaller because bandwidth today is a lot. That's cool. So it was a fun project because I would just do it every day and then sit and watch it. I'd be like, oh, cool. I'd be like, go me, or whatever. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to show that because I'm trying to keep this talk under control, and that's an example of just basically just using data that's lying around as art projects, right? Like garbage. I mean, it's essentially garbage. Okay, so next the part of the talk that I want to get into is getting more into the disassembly and talking about Nintendo modifications, which is another thing that I do quite a bit. And I wanted to talk about the 4 different kind of Nintendo modifications and see if I could make them make any sense. The first one I wanted to talk about, is Hogan's Alley. Perfect. Okay, so around the same time after the record was done, Paul and I started making Nintendo cartridges. And we learned that you could take apart, yeah, perfect. Wow, thank you. Okay. Oh, but this, we're not supposed to see this yet. Sorry. That's 3 projects. No, you can keep it on the Nintendo. Okay. So that you could take apart a Nintendo cartridge, and there's 2 chips inside of it. And one is a program chip, and one is a graphics chip. And essentially, a video game, the program chip tells the graphics to move around, and that's what becomes the game, right? And so by soldering different chips back into these cartridges, I've done a lot of projects which kind of just screw with video games in different ways. Some of them are where I just change the graphics of a video game, which is called a graphics hack, which is very easy. And I hope that you guys could come away with this lecture knowing that it isn't so hard to do. Another kind of hack is a program hack, where you keep the graphics of the game the same, but you tell them to do different things. And the third kind of hack I wanted to talk about is where you just basically barely do anything to the game and keep it the same. And that's what I'm into right now, which is kind of a little bit too obscure, I think, but that's okay. And then the fourth kind of hack of a Nintendo game is just by writing something from scratch. But I wanted to talk about the first thing is graphics hacks. So basically, you just leave the program of the game alone, and you switch the graphics. And so basically, you're just appropriating the program code from a game. And it's quite common, and you could do it to most games. You'd be surprised how many games are able to be modified. So just so you guys know that, you should look into it. Wolfenstein is the easiest to learn, I found out. Kaffel Wolfenstein on the Mac. And Jody did a famous piece, the artistjody.org, called, I think it was Untitled? Untitled or SOD? Anyway, SOD, yeah. And so, well, let me show you this hack. And so this is the hack of the game called Hogan's Alley. And Hogan's Alley is one of those shoot-'em-up games. And what I did was change it to I Shot Andy Warhol. And so essentially, I just changed all the graphics around, right? Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So, and then in a second, you'll see the characters. And so you have to shoot the Warhols, and then, of course, I switched the bottom guys, self-explanatory, to the Pope, Flavor Flav, and Colonel Sanders. And so the game acts just like normal. And I think I could get it to play. I can't shoot because the gun doesn't work on a projector. It only works on a TV. But you can see what the game looks like. Self-explanatory. Okay, anyway, I'll show you there's other parts to the game. There's the city section. Obviously the same thing, but it's in a city. And there's the soup shot, which when you're making a game modification or you're taking compiled code, and you can't really change how the game works, right? And so there's a lot of limitations. And so the clincher of why I made an I Shot Andy Warhol game as opposed to Shoot the Pope or Shoot Fat Elvis and Not Skinny Elvis is because the third part of this game, this is exactly how it was originally. Cans, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, it's too perfect. You know what I mean? I don't even have to do anything to the last part and it still makes sense. So that's a secret for you. But it's a good example of that when you work with like appropriating like the code from a video game that you have these really intense limitations you have to work with.
How long will it take you to code a project like that?
Well, that doesn't take that long, actually. I mean, actually, well, perfect question because I've prepared for that. The only hard part about that was it's not so hard to switch the graphics on a graphics chip. The hard part was the limitations of the ROM. And so, okay, now who do I put in? I've got 32 by 52 pixels. You know what I mean? Who the hell is going to be recognizable in 32 by 52 pixels? You'd be surprised how many people that cancels out. Like Pamela Anderson, which I tried at some point. Let me see. Just looked like some girl with a bikini on. Oh, Jesus doesn't even work. Let's see. So yeah, the hard part about that game was determining who were the most recognizable pop figures who actually were alive in the last 100 years that would work in that small. Oh, so here's Jesus. And the reason Jesus didn't work was because he had to get the cross in, he had to be smaller than the rest of the characters. So it's like Jesus is not really even recognizable as just a guy. He just looks like a skinny guy with a little loincloth. You know what I mean? So there are these like, the hardest part about that particular project was just kind of dealing with the culture. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the game hack wasn't so hard. There was one tiny game hack thing is that a lot of the characters didn't have the same symmetry. Like Flavor Flav has his hat to the side, which means I needed to find out the bit in the program that dealt with the symmetry of the characters. And that was the only kind of hard part. I almost didn't do it because I couldn't figure out. Yes?
How did you actually, once you popped open the game,
Uh-huh.
or popped open the cassette, how did you actually access the chip?
What do you use to rewrite the
How are you connected?
Oh, it's just a little machine called an EEPROM burner, which is just like a CD-ROM burner for computer chips. And they're cheap because a lot of people like to hot rod their Nissans now, and for some reason it takes the same chip. So when I go buy my EEPROM, it's like, this works great in the Nissan Ultra. But I was like, I don't even know what they're talking about. So it's just like a CD, you know. So it's not, you know, it just takes a little soldering, and I hate doing anything with my hands. So if I could do it, really anybody could do it. Like I really hate it. Do you know what I mean? Like you know, that's why I'm a computer artist. But it's one thing that I'm willing to do. Anyway, are there any other questions? Let me show you. I'll show you Pamela Anderson. And I tried Officer Ponch from Chips, and that didn't work at all either. So that's Pamela Anderson. It's just like, doesn't really make any sense. You know, like, doesn't really make any sense. So.
She is symmetrical, though.
Yeah, she is symmetrical. So, oh, yeah, and then for a while I was like, oh, maybe the people don't actually have to be real people. Maybe they could be, you know, like characters from Beaker or whatever. So anyway. I wonder if I should show low-level all-stars. How long? I have an hour, right? I gotta.
Yeah, you have maybe another half an hour. Max.
Oh, okay, that's max. So I shouldn't push it. So I'll go quick. Okay, 20 minutes.
Do low level because that's about hack crack.
Do it. Okay, let's do it. Can you put in that first DVD I showed you? Real quick. When I was making this 8-bit record, yes, I learned about this scene called cracking, cracking, and basically. It's started on the Commodore 64, and when kids would, when video games were available on the floppy disk for the Commodore 64, kids would crack them, and then this evolved. This kind of thing evolved, and eventually they would put their names on the front of the games. They cracked by whatever, Johan from Finland or whatever, and then they started getting into gangs and cracking games together, and then making these elaborate audio-visual introductions to games they cracked. And this was a huge thing for me when I started making computer art, because I just thought that was the most pure expression that I had. It's basically graffiti, but it's for computer nerds, you know, because you're basically tagging software. And this was like, when I first learned about that was when I was doing all this stuff at school, and that was the thing that really made me, and still to this day makes me the most excited. Oh, can you skip one or two? I think there might be something wrong with this DVD.
I'm pausing it.
Oh, okay, yeah, play. And skip like a couple ahead. Just your discretion. Okay, okay, whatever. Just play whatever one. And so basically, a lot of these are all cracked intros for Commodore games, and a lot of them are available online. And me and a friend, Alex Galloway, who is the head of the Radical Software Group, looked through a bunch of them and picked the ones that we liked the best. And this is an example of one by a group called Crack Force Amiga, and I thought this was really beautiful. And so basically, you get this video game, and it's been cracked by this kid, and this is the introduction he makes. And this is the kind of stuff that I think I just think it's great, you know. Any questions? Let's go a couple more ahead. We'll do one more.
And people still do this now with games.
Yeah, people still do, and people do it with software, because I learned about it on Pro Tools. Like, when I used Pro Tools in college, I saw some kid had it, and there was a snowman with a black bar over his eyes as the intro, and I was like, whoa. This is a group called Fairlight, which was very, very famous. And this, how about that, right? They're still around, right? What do they do now? Like high-end graphics, or still cracking? Yeah, this guy I ended up getting in touch with, and he had said that this particular intro didn't get much play in the day because it wasn't flashy enough. But Alex and I thought it was the greatest thing we'd ever seen in our life. So, okay, that's good for that. We had to show that. Big influence. But those are kids that are basically piggybacking on software, you know what I mean? Which I think is amazing. And it's not so different from what I do. Okay, next hack. Let's do the opposite. Well, let's see, what else did I bring? Another project I did was called Super Mario Clouds, and that's almost the exact opposite. In Super Mario Clouds, I stole the graphics, and I just basically erased the program code. So it's the opposite of the Warhol. Does that make sense? And so basically, let's see. I just have I don't have the actual cartridge here. So it just looks like that. So it's just basically the clouds from the Mario Brothers game. So when you put in the cartridge, they just scroll forever. And that was pretty easy to do. Yes, show an installation shot. So how do I install this? What is it? Is it a video? Is it installation? ... This is how usually I install it, and it's very important. The installation is very important. This is a high-res picture, so give it a second. But it was when I made the Warhol and the clouds basically at the same time, and I made the so this is what it usually looks like when it's installed. And so there's a couple projectors, and as many projectors as you can give me, I do. And it's supposed to be like a picnic. It's supposed to be like a place where you'd like to take a picnic. Well, that's how I like to think of it. Like anyway. Does that make sense? But when I did this project, because I had done the graphic Warhol thing, and I thought, well, it'd be funny not to change the graphics of the game. You know what I mean? It'd be funny just to leave the graphic chip untouched on the Nintendo, because then you get into this weird area like it's not even a copy. Do you know what I mean? It's like the clouds that I'm projecting are the real clouds, and like that to me was like the essence of what I'm trying to do. Like it's kind of like a rebellion against design culture and high-end computer culture. It's like, okay, it's just the clouds, and it's like a very iconic image, but like those are the real clouds. Do you know what I mean? It's like those are the real clouds. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know how to say it. The best way I could say it is, step to that. Oh, this is going terrible. No, I don't know. Are there any questions? So that's a very simple, and around that time my work, and we could talk I'm going to try to, my work got simpler and simpler, and it's just getting simpler and simpler, because I like to do things that are really easy. And at that time, I didn't have much exhibition opportunity, and so I made a web page for that and how to make it. Here's the source code, and here's how I made it. Download it, make it yourself. It's cool. And I had, hoped that it would participate in web culture, and it ended up, and it did, because hey, here's a kid who did this thing with the Mario thing, So that was kind of one of the original impetuses to do that project. What was I trying to say? Yeah, okay. Third example is, this one's ridiculous. So now what I like to do is I like to change the game as least as possible. Like, what's the littlest thing I could do to a game to make it into some kind of art? Okay. So this is a new one that I just did, and I'm very proud of it, and it's called Super Slow Tetris. And, and basically all it is a Tetris, but it runs super slow. And I was very proud about this because this isn't really a graphics hack, and it's hardly a program hack. And I didn't even disassemble the game to do it. So I just basically what I did is I opened up the ROM in binary, and I wrote a little thing at the end that said, because all old computer games sync to the television screen. And I just said, hey, why don't we sync to every 3 times the electron goes on the TV instead of every one? You know what I mean? So it's just a tiny little waiter at the beginning of the code. And I show the code actually here. Oh, can we go to the computer? And then we'll go back to the Nintendo. Sorry. OK. Oh, I got to put it in because it takes so long to get going that we might not actually see anything. So this is what it looks like. So I just added, and this is just a couple ones and zeros I added to the end of the ROM. And so anyway, it's really nerdy, but I was very proud of it because it's just like, what is the littlest thing you could do to a video game that would make it cool? OK, we could go back to the Nintendo, but I'm not going to promise anybody here anything because, OK, let's see. Now, the original game makes you wait on this screen for like 15 seconds. And mine makes you wait on the screen for a really long time. So let's give it like 45 seconds. And if it doesn't get over, we'll let it, maybe we'll come back to it. Let's come back to that, because it's got to sit for a while, because it's really slow. OK, we'll just, oh, what else do I want to talk about? Oh, wait. Oh, OK. Oh, I can't talk about my next Nintendo thing until we show that. Oh, well, let's skip ahead. Stuff I do when not screwing with computers. OK. Maybe let's skip that, because we're short on time. OK.
Well, Cory,
Yeah.
since you are integrating Q&A into your talk.
Oh, no Q&A. Let's axe the Q&A, and let's show this video. OK, perfect idea. Can you put in the one that says Beach Boys versus Ghetto Boys? So I wanted to give an example of the things I do when not screwing with computers, because basically I'm hoping you're getting the idea that most everything I do is just stealing stuff, right? Are we getting that? And it's not because I'm trying to make a political statement. It's not because I'm not trying to be a hacker or a hacktivist or anything. It's just because, as Mark put it interesting in conversation the other day, it's like he says, it's the air you breathe. And it's just like, like me being 26 or whatever, like I just don't know anything else. You know what I mean? Like I have nothing in my mind has any significance unless it's like attached to some kind of culture or pop culture thing. Does that make sense? Anyway, so this is a video called The Beach Boys versus the Ghetto Boys. And it's just the video for the Beach Boys 6 feet deep. And then in a second, wait, that's the Ghetto Boys. And then in a second, the Beach Boys' Little Surfer Girl is going to come on. And so all I did here was just play the 2 videos side by side. And I just wanted to play it as an example of the other stuff I made, which hopefully will give you the idea that it's all the same, really, whether it's computer or not computer. Just got to wait a sec. OK. The Beach Boys songs are shorter because pop music back then, the songs were shorter. So just ride it out for a little while.
How long were they?
Well, see, the Beach Boys' Little Surfer Girl is like 2.5 minutes, which is insane. Think of how short that is. It's like an intro for a song now. Maybe a little V. There we go. So this isn't, I always think that this project I made essentially the same time I did the Tetris thing, and I always think that they're not so much different. Like here I barely did anything, in Tetris I barely did anything. So my process is just basically slowly degrading into where I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to give people videos, music videos from the 80s or something. All right, you can turn that off. Is there any questions about that?
You did concern yourself, though, with syncing.
Yes, that I did do. And that was a huge thing for me. I didn't know if I should do that, but I did. I slowed one of them down a tad. And then I pitched one a little bit in the beginning because the Beach Boys modulates a half step halfway through, which is really weird. And that obviously is heavy internet surfing inspired. You know what I mean? I wanted to do a mashup like on the internet, but I didn't want to actually edit it. Like I just wanted to put two things side by side. And then there was a whole process of like New Order, New Edition, Two Live Crew, Motley Crue, like finding something that would work together. Finally, I lucked out that those, and I bought lots of DVDs. So, all right, so next thing, appropriating aesthetics. And I wanted to show a little thing, the project I did called the Infinite Fill Zone. And, no, let's do Pizza Party first. Wait, yeah, okay, Infinite Fill Zone. And so, as well as just like stealing code or whatever, I also just like software, you know what I mean, and really ghetto software. And so about a year ago, I got heavy duty into this program called Lightning Paint. And Lightning Paint is a clone of Mac Paint. And we all remember Mac Paint, right? Anybody? Well, Mac Paint looked like this. It was the first graphical, like Photoshop type application for Macintosh. And it looks like this. Hey, cool. And you get to do things like this. And you get to like really cool stuff like this. And the very, very important part of this software is the paint bucket, which allows you to fill patterns. And basically, because since this program was in black and white, you couldn't fill color. And so, oh, wow. So basically, you have all these patterns. And so I really got very heavy into this and did a show this summer called the Infinite Fill Show, where I asked people, hey, if you have artwork that's black and white and has patterns in it, let's do an art show together. And so this is what that ended up looking like. There ended up being 93 artists. Cool, right? It looks like big Mac Paint. And so I don't know why I did it, except I just love the way that that software looks. And I think every software has an aesthetic. And like, even though at one point I was like, you can't use software to make art because you're a poser. You know what I mean? You've got to write your software. And now I'm a little bit more open-minded. I'm like, well, you can use software. And as long as you're aware of the aesthetic that the software imposes, just like dive right in because it's awesome. Do you know what I mean? And so anyway, like for instance, my lecture notes is a good example of diving right into HTML circa 1995. You know what I mean? And I call this dirt style design. Anyway, okay. What was I going to show next?
How's our Tetris doing?
Huh?
How's Tetris doing?
Oh, let's go back to Tetris. Good idea. I don't know. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. It's just ridiculous, right? I'm pressing down. It should move. I don't remember how long I set it for, but it might just, come on. Oh, there we go. So like endurance video, anybody? Woo! Yeah, that's the project. It's infuriating. It's unplayable. Like, I don't know where it's going, you know what I mean? But I like it, just like, you just leave it on and just let it roll, you know what I mean? Because eventually it's going to kill itself, but it'll probably take like 8 hours or something, do you know what I mean? So, any questions continuing on super slow Tetris?
You could do movies like that and just slow them down 10 hours long.
Well, I know there was the artist Douglas Gordon, who I love, did 24-Hour Psycho, which he rigged a projector up to play that movie 24 hours. And I was like, damn, that is awesome.
Play it over and over again for 24 hours?
Oh, I don't know. Somebody who knows something about art talk.
It was once through.
Once through, yeah.
So you're basically coming in and looking at a frame.
It's a beautiful idea.
To change to another frame.
John
Yeah.
Cage also has that piece, I forgot the name of it, that's going to take a couple
Yeah, and John Simon, the computer artist, did the every icon, which also will take. And so there's a whole history of this. This I think is a little bit stupider, but that's right where I am right now. You know what I mean? Okay, well, thank you for reminding me about that. Let's talk about the iPod, another Nintendo thing, which is basically just appropriating the sound of the Nintendo. Do you want to pass this around? Here, we can pass it around. But I like the idea of doing Tetris because it's a game where time is obviously the most crucial element. And it's frustrating, and I hate Tetris. So can we go back to the Nintendo? This is a project I did just called an iPod. You can call it whatever you want. It's just basically an iPod for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And I just put in all these cool songs. Oh, could we have a little V on the...
It's ready to go.
Oh, the Nintendo?
Yeah.
Maybe I knocked it out. Did I knock it out? It should be sending. There we go. Are there any requests?
Oh, I see Judas Priest up there.
No, not Judas Priest, but New Order. Oh, New Order and Weezer, okay. Just the popular part of the song I would add. Weezer is the whole song because I determined that the entire song is the popular part of the song. So this was written from scratch, and it also has a DJ function, you know? So if I just want the melody, or just the drums, or just the bass, and the guitar, and the drums, right? Or the bass and the melody, right? Does that make sense? So anyway, so this is kind of like a performance tool which kind of strays from most of my work because I usually hate doing things from scratch, you know what I mean? Like because I don't think it gives people enough to latch onto, but you gotta go with it sometimes.
The sounds, are they original from the Super Mario sound effect?
No, the Nintendo has a built-in sound chip, and I'm just poking the appropriate numbers into the sound chip. Yeah? It's not MIDI. It's just proprietary to the Nintendo hardware. I should point out that that's a very important part of working on the Nintendo is that you have to essentially work directly with the hardware.
Cory,
Yeah?
you're saying that you don't like to do anything from scratch because you want to make sure people have something to latch onto.
Yeah.
I had the sense that it also had to do somehow with the notion of...
Insecurity? No, just kidding. No, go ahead.
No, so this guy who wrote The Cathedral and The Bazaar, an essay we read about open source software programming, talks a lot about laziness or efficiency. Is that a motivator too? That is, you can make things from scratch if people do have something to latch onto by picking, for example, familiar songs.
Right. So you're asking, is just laziness like a factor in the work?
If you say that you like to steal and you make good art, are you also a lazy artist?
That's a very good question. Let me think. Am I a lazy artist? I like the idea of being belligerent or something, like appearing careless. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever. But I don't think I'm lazy. So I think my question is half yes and half no. Does that make sense? Like, I like when I get a new piece of software, or like Flash. If I'm dying to make something on Flash, you know, and I just want to get in there and just be just lazy and messy and make it terrible. You know what I mean? And but to me, that's just just letting the software beat me up, and I'm interested in that, right? And so, and I'm just interested in the same way with my other work, is just letting that cultural stuff punch me around a bit. Anyway, I don't even know if that was an answer, but I hope it's a good answer. But I like working with stuff because it just is the only stuff that makes sense to me, and it's also the stuff that people can understand the most easily. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is, and then we can maybe play this video. Okay, is Pizza Party and my work with ibeam.org. And I work in a group there called the Contagious Media Group, and we're a research and development group that studies the phenomena of web memes. And it's the idea, and a web meme is a meme is an idea that spreads itself. And a web meme is a good example of a web meme is like some kind of email that you get while you're at work. Hey, check this out. You know,
All your base are belong to us.
all your base are belong to us is a good. Or remember that homepage of that guy who lived in Eastern Europe, and he's like, or the first one I remember was Mr. T ate my balls. Does anyone remember that? Huge web meme. And then like, never mind, let's not, hamster dance. Okay, let's start. Everyone's like, nobody remembers that. Come on, 96? Anyway, so we studied that, and I think that's a big reason why a lot of my work appropriates things is because that's the kind of language that those things end up using often or not. And I'm such a hyper web server that more and more of my work is kind of being twisted into that, but not really, you know what I mean? And so a project I did as a commission from iBeam is called Pizza Party. And this uses a thing called page scraping. And what a lot of people don't know is at Domino's, you could order pizza online. You could order pizza through their website by just clicking it. And so Pizza Party is basically a command line application. And for those of you who don't know, the command line is this kind of like what computers were like before they had graphics. You just had to type things in, and that's how you operated the computers. And that's called a command line. And so Pizza Party is a command line interface for ordering pizza from Domino's, which means all you have to do to order a pizza is type in a couple words, right? Like Pizza Party. Well, I'll show you. To order a pizza, first I have to log on to the server. So give me a second. So what you'd have to type is Pizza Party and then flags for what kind of toppings you want, and like a -P for pepperoni. Oh, password, this is the hard part. Just got hacked, so I changed it to something very complicated. Okay, good. Before it was, no, it wasn't, but I just always, easy password to remember. No, anyway, okay. Pizza Party. Okay, so this is the manual page, which is basically a help file for it. So it says Pizza Party program provides a text-only command line interface for ordering Domino's pizzas from the terminal. This pizza is intended to aid in the throwing of pizza parties, which are also sometimes known as saw parties. And so to order a pizza, all you have to type is Pizza Party and then the flag. So -PMX equals pepperoni, mushrooms, and extra cheese. 2, medium, and regular. And this was programmed with help from a program from iBeam named Michael Fruman. And it's an interesting example of something called page scraping, which is basically it goes to Domino's. It steals all the data from Domino's website, right? It reformats it, right? And then it throws it back to Domino's. And it's called page scraping. And it's a common technique for robots and bots to steal information out of the web. And this, of course, it's a common technique for us to fake out Domino's web server and make it think it's coming from a web page. So I wanted to show it because I think it's a good example of kind of appropriating code in a kind of not so nerdy assembly type way, in a kind of more fun internet way. And I wanted to order a pizza for you guys, but Domino's just changed their website, and so now the program needs to be updated because it doesn't work right now. I know, right?
Did somebody write a paper saying it was your thing was full of security bugs?
Yes, they did. Good point. Let's go to the Pizza Party homepage and look at that. This was a good example of a semi-web meme. It means the night I put it online, the next day, the server, which was had crashed because so many people had seen it. And I was number 2 on Google for Pizza Party the next day. So let's go to Pizza Party homepage, and I could show you. And as Tom points out, which was, I think, one of the best things that happened because of the project. Right. Sorry, my homepage is pretty lame. Let's see. News. Yeah, so some computer scientists filed an official bug list report to like the central open source bug list repository, which I was really happy about because it means like, my party's playing with the big boys now, or my program's playing with the big boys, you know. And this is also, you know, open source, and you could download it and do whatever you want to. I should actually also point out that when I'm not being hyper lazy, I do put all this code stuff online so people could learn how to do it, and you know. ... Okay. Any questions about that? Are there any questions? Yes.
Where did the pizzas go?
Oh, you have to sign up for Domino's things beforehand.
So it has like a login.
Yeah, so then you put your login in a little like RC file, and then it'll automatically do it. I mean, we could do it. So.
Free pizza?
You have to pay cash at door, and that's why it's possible. Because if it was credit card, it would get into ridiculous. But cash at, I mean, it's ridiculous that, I mean, cash at door, I mean, I could just like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I won't, this was a very conservative art project given the possibilities.
What were the bugs then?
The bugs are basically like it's unencrypted, which the Domino site is unencrypted. So when you're sending unencrypted passwords over the network, that's obviously a security flaw. More to do with Domino's than to do with my program. Also, there's a file where you can store your password and username in a file in your directory, but it's never a good idea to store your passwords and usernames in a file in the directory, which you don't have to in this program. So it's kind of really common sense, like Unix security concerns, which I was like, cool. Wrote a terrible program. Well, me and Michael. No, I should say that Michael did a good job, and this is a good example of a collaboration, a good collaboration that I did with iBeam. Michael was a Unix nerd, and I kind of knew about Unix, and he's like, no, here's how you do a man page, so stuff like that. Is there any, I guess we should just wrap it up. What do I need to do to wrap it up? Anything?
Well, I mean, I think now would be maybe a good time since we have a few minutes
Okay.
to take a few general questions.
And then I'll play a video while everybody's leaving, because there's one more video I want to play. But I don't think we have time. Okay, yes?
Do you know the guys at Carbon Defense League and Hacktivist? And
I know some of them, like, we've met.
Yeah,
They did a Game Boy. Yeah, did a Game Boy thing where they put it back on the shelves, which I always thought was cool.
Really
So they did something very similar, yeah.
and
Barbie
their
Liberation
music stuff
Project
too.
or something?
Yeah.
I don't know their music stuff so well.
Yeah, it's like a group of guys who, programmers who also play in like a crazy like metal band, and they do all this stuff too. Yeah.
Coming. Yeah. In the future. Yeah, cool. I have a couple bands, the 8-Bit Construction Set, the Acid Heads, Jamie Arcangel and the Archangel, and the Gay Beatles. Yes?
I saw your work with the floating clouds from
Yeah.
Mario Brothers. Was that at the Biennial?
Yeah, that's what I showed at the Biennial in 2 projections.
Do you remember what the art education department put up, for like the description of the work? In the
I barely remember it. I don't know. Yeah, do you remember? Well,
I'm trying to. It was something like it returns to a naive understanding of nature, one of innocence.
I mean, elaborate on that. I should elaborate on that whole situation. Like, I just did that installation at the Biennial, and I was just kind of like, whatever, did the whole, like, read the thing. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of am new to the whole thing, so I have no idea, you know. I was like, okay, if that's what they think, cool, fine with me. You know what I mean? Like,
Did they ask you what it's about, or they just came up with that?
they just came up with that. If that's what they wanted to think is about, it's fine, you know? Because if you ask me what I think it's about, I'll be like, well, it's kind of silly, it's stupid, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm not the best person to get, you know, I mean, in terms of process, I'm really strict with myself, and I could battle with the best in terms of process, but in terms of cultural and why I do what I do, I have no idea. Yeah?
Yeah, you're working with a lot of stuff from about, I don't know, what, 10 or 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking about when you said that it's like the air you breathe that you're working with is
Mhm.
popular media material. And I was thinking, well, if that's true, then, you know, how long can you work with this stuff? Because obviously you're working with a lot of stuff, so it's really transparent and you can
Right.
see what you're doing and it's really clear. But, you know, what if you did something that wasn't like that, more complicated since
You're like, how would I, okay, that's a good question. You're asking, what would I do if I like stepped it up a little bit?
Yeah.
Well,
Or could you do the same thing?
no, I couldn't.
Right.
I'm not brilliant. And so working on these older things is easy for me because,
Photoshop brushes.
oh, Photoshop brush. Okay, so maybe okay, good point. Yeah, in terms of doing the hardcore low-level stuff, I couldn't. But in terms of just getting beat up by software and making comments on software, yes, I could. And so me and my friend Joe from Beige had worked on a project called, which was basically Photoshop brushes, but they were images of the Booyah tribe. We called it the Booyah Technology Initiative. And so when you went to paint, it just painted a picture of the Booyah tribe. And so that's a good example of what I would do. I never did it, but I always wanted to make an Adobe After Effects plugin that would be a Booyah plugin. And so no matter what video you started with, it would just turn out to be a still image of the Booyah tribe. And so those I think are good examples of what I would do if I stepped it up a notch. And Pizza Party I think is an okay example. Well, it kind of has the old end to it, but I'm not at all afraid using new stuff, you know what I mean? I just have to step a little bit gingerly because it's really easy to get confused, it's really easy to get confused. But most likely it would be similar. Any other questions? Yes?
What are you hoping to do next? Like, where are you going from here?
Just downhill. I have a lot of good ideas. I have a lot of cool projects, and I should say today I was working on a project with Frankie, who's in the audience, trying to make a toaster that burns Tupac into every image of the toast. So, but like in terms of career or art, I mean, I can go on a million art ideas. Last week I spent like 5 hours on the 1 and 9 train trying to like stand right in the exact right place so that the train would line up with, the train would stop and the pole would line up with the wall and it would say 666. So that will never work. I determined I gave up. So, but I don't know. I just keep on doing this stuff. I just do it all day. I just do it, so I'm sure it won't stop. Maybe one day I'll burn out or get whack, either one, I don't know. Or maybe I am whack and I don't know it. Yes?
When was the last time you played Bach on the guitar?
Oh, good question. Boy, it's probably about two or 3 years. At one point I got all my music out and I started playing it again. But it's been a few years now. It's really, I don't know. It's like breaking up. But I do have a bunch of guitar projects planned too, which I'll keep secret. Any other questions? So, if there's no other questions, yes?
I have a question about your QuickTime thing.
Yes.
So once you've got this header in a little file, how do you get the whole thing into a bigger file?
Once you have a header, and you just export it, right? Once you have a header,
I don't know that much about it.
Oh yeah, you get QuickTime Pro, and once you have a header and it's playing a video in your QuickTime player, you just go to export and it'll export the video. What I had to do for data diaries is I couldn't do it the hacking way because the hacking way only worked with playback and not export. And so I dumped the RAM. There's a program that will dump your RAM onto your disk, and I did that and then attached a header to it, opened it up with QuickTime Player, and then exported it as video, and then made DVDs and put it on the web and stuff like that. So, anyway. Any way you can. If you have something playing a video, you could usually find a way to suck it out of your computer.
One last question,
yeah?
Cory. So you appropriate a lot of found material in your work. Do you also make your work available to others if they want to appropriate it?
Yes. I mean, when I'm not being hyper lazy, I do put up a how-to and the source code for my projects, you know what I mean? Or if it's just a binary, just the binary. So I don't care what. Oh, well, actually, there's a bunch of good examples. Like, I wonder where they are, but like some guy emailed me Mario Clouds on a Game Boy, which I thought was cute. There was another guy, khello.org from, I think, Italy, but I'm not quite sure, who emailed me my project Super Mario Clouds without the clouds. So he emailed me a QuickTime file of just blue. There's a kid, Eric, and I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, who made bootlegs of Super Mario Clouds and sold them for $20 a piece on DVD. So there's been a bunch of examples of that already, and I'm like, cool. And then he made me pay for it. So, but I'm like all for, I kind of am interested when people email me that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Because I like it, you know what I mean? I think it's funny. So and when you're kind of appropriating stuff, you can't get mad when people appropriate what you appropriated.
And that's what we mean by open source culture.
Yeah, exactly. And that wraps up. All right. And so, can you put on the one that says 4143 rave 95? So this is a video I made with Frankie, and we didn't have time, so I'll just play it while it's a infinite fill video, all done with Mac Paint, or Lightning Paint. So anyway, thanks a lot for coming. I appreciate it, and hope it was cool.